walls, and I hope you're watching the Cat Cave.
Whether you're in North or South Carolina or anywhere else in the world, enter the Cat Cave with Ryan, Frick, and Shannon Smith to listen to your favorite Carolina Panthers themed podcast as part of the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, where you can find shows like Embrace Debate and Inside the Vault, powered by the Fans First Sports Network, and also on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel, where you can also watch Believe in Panthers with Desmond Johnson and Jonathan Stewart. Welcome into the Cat Cave this week. As always, I am Ryan Frick, and to my proverbial left or right, whichever one you're seeing on the screen, is my co-host Shannon Smith. Shannon, what's up, bud?
And not too much. Let's go ahead and dive into this.
Yeah, unfortunately, we got our hopes up with the performance against the Cincinnati Bengals 2 weeks ago, and the opposite took place this past week. The Carolina Panthers go on the road, take on the Chicago Bears in what should have been a revenge game for the Panthers, with everything they've given to the Chicago Bears in order to receive a quarterback that sat on the bench until the fourth quarter in this game as the Chicago Bears put a beating on the Carolina Panthers 36-10. I don't know where to start with this game, Shannon. What'd you feel about this loss?
Well, you don't know where to start. Well, I do. It looked like the Carolina Panthers were just outclassed. You know, I look at what the Bears have received from the Panthers, and all I can say is they took what we gave them, and they developed it. And it was rough to see. The offensive side of the ball is what disappointed me a lot. Going from what you were talking about with Andy Dalton and his performance with the Raiders, his performance with the Cincinnati Bengals, and then coming out here and only dropping one touchdown as an offense. There was mistakes being made in the passing game. Now, there were times where Andy would put it on the dime for some of the receivers, and there would be drops. You know, Johnson would drop some passes. There were some passes dropped by Leggett. The running game was a bright spot because Chuba has been the consistent offensive player, and you put it perfectly on the Facebook page for the Cat Cave, where Chuba has been pretty much the MVP of the offense. You're absolutely correct, because the running game has been consistent. The passing game has been hit and miss. You know, we had the 2 good weeks. This week, it was just like couldn't hit anything in the passing game. There were times where Andy Dalton was being chased in the pocket. There were times where he was not standing tall in the pocket. He's not a running quarterback or a quarterback that has good feet. So he has to make it happen with his arm, which, of course, that sounds very obvious, like no duh. I know there's people out there saying that. But the fact that on the play action or the rollout or the scramble, that's not his forte. He stands up tall in the pocket and throws it. And there were times where he would throw to the other team. There were times where he would throw incompletions. The passing game was just not helping out the running game, and that was rough. And then the defense, of course, there was holes in the defense. You know, injuries play into this, but there's a next man up mentality that you have to have as a football team. Didn't see that in this game. So it was rough to watch from beginning to the end.
I mean, when you take a look at this game, it's sort of hard not to, like you said, let's start off with the offensive side of the ball. Chuba Hubbard has been the only consistent part of this offense. Even when Bryce Young was starting, Chuba Hubbard is the only guy on this offense that has been able to put up statistics and produce consistently, which is why I went to social media and said that if anybody on this team deserved a contract extension, it is Chuba Hubbard. Miles Sanders had a couple of runs in this game against the Bears where he looked like he looked the week prior. But at the end of the day, this is Chuba Hubbard's backfield, and he's being underpaid versus Miles Sanders being overpaid. Excuse me right now. When you look at the Chicago Bears, I mean, they're not scoring a lot of points, and when they are, it's not a lot of offensive production. If you go back to week 1, They put up 24 points in a win against the Titans, 13 points in a loss to the Texans, 16 points, 24 points. This is the first time they've scored 30 or more all season. On top of it, the only way that the Chicago Bears were able to go and draft Caleb Williams was because of everything the Carolina Panthers gave up to go and get Bryce Young. Now, this is obviously the best game that Caleb Williams has had as a pro. He had 304 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. But from that perspective, like you talked about, guys were getting beat in the secondary. I mean, J.C. Horn was ejected in this game for a fight that broke out late after the game was already out of hand. I mean, I have been the biggest homer on this show when it comes to former South Carolina Gamecocks. J.C. Horn got beat a lot in this game by DJ Moore.
Yes.
There was one of the touchdowns DJ Moore had. J.C. Horn was not in coverage, but the safety was not there, and it allowed DJ Moore another piece that was gifted to the Chicago Bears by the Carolina Panthers to help put us away. So as frustrating as the offense is, we're sort of used to that, right? We're not really used to the defensive output in this game. And I know we lost Shaq Thompson last week. We talked about that in the last week's show. But it shouldn't have been this much of a drop-off in defensive production. Now, we're going to get to some injuries here in a second. We did have a pass rusher in Jadeveon Clowney that went down with a shoulder injury in this game that did not return. But it's hard to really, when you're letting a rookie quarterback throw for 304 yards. Now, granted, they were able to sort of stuff the run game when it comes to DeAndre Swift. However, Roschon Johnson punched in 2 touchdowns from the goal line. DeAndre Swift was still able to be productive on offense, albeit not maybe necessarily running the ball. I think he had 3.5 yards to carry. But you can't let a rookie quarterback throw for 300 yards. I don't think Bryce Young has a 300-yard game in his career. I should have checked that prior to this show. But a very disappointing output by the Carolina Panthers this past week against the Chicago Bears. And we talked about some injuries. There were some really bad injuries in this game too. Tommy Tremble caught a pass, was absolutely rocked, knocked out. Ball comes loose. Concussion, did not return. I guess I should backtrack for a second. Outside of that fumble when he got knocked out and an interception from Andy Dalton, they sort of protected the ball okay. But yeah, you had Tommy Tremble, the tight end, go out in this game. I mentioned it earlier, Jadeveon Clowney without the shoulder injury. You talked about Xavier Legette having a couple of drops. He also left the game with a shoulder injury, not to return. The center, Austin Corbett, went out with a bicep injury, did not return. And Taylor Moton went out with an elbow injury that now puts at risk his consecutive start, consistency with the Carolina Panthers going into this weekend. That's 2 starting offensive linemen that the Carolina Panthers cannot afford to lose. I mean, in this game against the Bears, they gave up 4 sacks. Andy Dalton was sacked 3 times, and Bryce Young coming in garbage time actually didn't look bad. He went 4 of 7, 58 yards. He was also sacked once, but looked really good in garbage time. What do you make of these injuries, and what do you make of Bryce Young coming in late to try to salvage something in a blowout loss?
With the injuries, it's very unfortunate. It's something that happens in football. We all know that it's a physical game. But the Panthers have stacked on injuries this year. What can we attribute to that? Not playing physical enough. There's some times where being physical is going to cause you some injuries, but not being physical enough is going to cause you getting hurt as well, too. There were times where the Bears were physical. The Bears hit. The Bears went out there and they played. I don't know if it was the Panthers playing stiff. I don't know if it was them not playing stiff. It's something that you just got to look at because, I mean, the Bears were physical, and you got to be physical in this game. You got to give and you got to give. You're going to receive, but you got to give, and you got to dish it out as well, too. And that was something that the Panthers did not do. That was something that the heart is not there. And we talked about, Shaq being hurt. He was the heart of the defense. He was a guy that was happy to be brought back. But now Shaq is hurt, and he's going to be hurt for a while. So the heart was not there. And that's what I was worried about. To get to the next part of your question, it was garbage time he came in, right? What's going
Yeah.
on during garbage time with the other team?
They're probably getting some backups in, letting some backups get some play time, and seeing what they can do to stop, the backups for the Panthers coming in.
They're winding down. That's basically what's going on. You're absolutely correct. They're winding down. They're getting ready to cap this game off. They're closing the game out. Now, should we be able to take that away from Bryce? No, we shouldn't take that away. He went out there and he had to mop up. He had to mop. He had to clean up. So he did. He cleaned up. He got sacked once. He looked okay, but then again, you got to look at it as garbage time. There's been some opportunities where he's been in when the game is going on. You've not really had anything go on. But I posed this right here as well too. You talked about the Bears, and this was very interesting. You talked about the Bears didn't do a lot of scoring in the past few weeks. They did some scoring against the Panthers. Can you accredit that to the fact that the Bears had good field position?
I mean, maybe. I think at the end of the day, it's. I mean, a lot of their drives came from the goal line set, like from the goal line, which meant they drove the ball down the field. I'd have to go back and look at the drive chart, but it didn't feel like they ever had bad field position the entire game. To your point.
Mm-hmm. And this is a field position game. We know that. We know field position plays into a part of it. That's something that's forgotten when it comes down to football. Good teams get themselves in very good field position. They make sure that the field position is in their favor. And I think the Bears, that's something that the Bears did. They had good field position a lot of the games. There were times where they had field position. And the time possession was something else that went on as well, too. Because, when you have the ball, a good amount of the time, you're going to either wear down that defense, score points, or both. So that was something that the Bears did do, and that's the reason why they had a big score. The Bears are not a very heavy offensive squad. They got a rookie quarterback. They do. You can say what you want with Caleb Williams. You can say what you want with him. He's not a bad quarterback. He's not, but he's a rookie. He's a young guy. He's starting his first year in the pros. We can talk about Jaden Daniels all day long. We can talk about that all day. However, you got to look at the fact that these guys are rookies. They're first-year players. They're in the league for the first time. Some are going to adapt. Some might not. It's all about the mainstay. It's good to have a good couple of games, but you got to keep that momentum going. Caleb, on the other hand, he's had his times where he's not been so great. He's had his times where he's looked good. This game was a game where he looked really good. So it's all about keeping it going.
I mean, when you look at Caleb's stats so far, I mean, the first game of the year, he only had 93 passing yards. He did throw for 363 yards against the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
He also had 2 interceptions and a fumble in that game. His high rushing game was against Houston, where he carried the ball 5 times for 44 yards. So this is his second 300-yard pass game of his rookie season. But listen, I mean, I think we can all agree that, excuse me, Jaden Daniels is doing what CJ Stroud was doing last year. He's shocking. Like, Washington wasn't expected to be one of those teams, and they are. They're in the lead of their division. That includes an Eagles team that played for a Super Bowl a couple years ago, and a Dallas Cowboys team that has been in the playoffs every year, which seems like forever. So it still doesn't feel good for a team like the Carolina Panthers, who are kind of consistently known for their defense, to give up 36 points on the road to a Bears team. And it hurts that much worse knowing how much the Bears front office fleeced the worst owner in sports, David Tepper, in getting basically all this draft capital. I need to go look at all the players that they have plus a second rounder this year. But they got beat with the draft pick that the Carolina Panthers should have had this year. They got beat, 2 touchdowns scored by the wide receiver they gave up in order to get the number 1 pick. And it's I don't think there's a word worse than disappointing that you can use, especially when you come off the fact that we have some banged up defensive players, and the Panthers have tried to address that here this week, signing defensive end Deshaun Williams to the active roster and signing Shaq Lawson to the practice squad. Shannon, both of these guys have two things in common. They both went to Clemson, and believe it or not, they went to the same high school here in Central South Carolina, did Shaq Lawson and Deshaun Williams. Deshaun Williams, an undrafted defensive end out of Clemson. He played for the Bengals in his initial year of the league back in 2015. He is, I believe, 31 years old. 6'1", 295-pound defensive end. Shaq Lawson, though, was drafted in the first round of the 2016 draft by the Buffalo Bills. He's also had some time with Miami and the New York Jets. Went back to Buffalo for the 2022-2023 season, and now finds himself in Carolina. Career 207 total tackles, 26 sacks with 7 forced fumbles, 14 pass deflections. He was an All-American in college in 2015, a consensus All-American in 2015, and a first-team All-ACC player in that same year. Obviously, they got Shaq Lawson on the practice squad to get him acclimated to the defense. Do you first of all, especially if Clowney is set to miss some significant time, they signed some guys because the Carolina Panthers have, I believe, they're bottom 5 in sacks on the season. Do you think a guy like Deshaun Williams or a guy like Shaq Lawson is going to be able to come in and get some more pressure on the quarterback that the Panthers have needed so much this season?
If not, it doesn't hurt to try, because what else have they got? See, this defense has been depleted. The defense needs some type of heart. The defense needs some type of momentum. You know, Evero came back to coach this defense, and he had opportunities to go elsewhere, had opportunities to go other places. He come back to coach this defense. And so to me, it looks like he's got to instill some type of heart into this defense. You know, these guys have got to do it, because the offense in the Raiders game, when the offense started scoring, the defense actually got a shot in the arm, and they
got motivated. Yep.
Yeah, they knew what they were here to do. That offense looked like it's sputtering. The offense started sputtering, like with the Bengals. They were actually in the game with the Bengals. They were in it. This game, they were not in it. And so it was like it's like Shaq was hurt. That was it. That's what it looked like. And so there has to be some type of heart to be instilled. This is something that I've also thought about as well, too, right here, Ryan. This is something I thought about as well. I don't want to bring this up with other teams, but Robert Saleh got fired, of course.
I was going to mention that. I'm really upset that you got there before me.
Sorry.
You're good, man. You're good. You're totally good, man.
But Robert Saleh got fired from the Jets yesterday. Got fired yesterday. Early in the morning, got fired. Goodbye.
Escorted out the building by security.
Yes. And there you have it. So Robert Saleh getting the boot the way that he did, there was talk saying that he basically let Aaron Rodgers run the team. There was no instilling anything. And it's like we talked about last year. Locker room presence. Who's going to step up in that locker room? Who's going to go into the locker room and get everybody into this? Who's going to do it? I don't know who is going to step up and be that locker room guy. Looking at Panthers teams in the past, Steve Smith was a locker room guy. He was a presence in the locker room. He was one of those guys that will hold you accountable in the locker room. Look around. Who have you got in this locker room that's going to hold somebody accountable? When are you going to stop blaming the guy beside you and look in here and look here and realize, hey, guys, we all got to do something. We all got to stop playing like a bunch of individuals. We see that in teams in the pros. They're playing like individuals. This is what's going on. When the Raiders lost to the Panthers, Antonio Pierce went to the media and said, we had guys out there making business moves. We have guys out there who are thinking of themselves. We have guys doing it in the WNBA. Becky Hammond was talking about that when New York Liberty lost, when they lost to New York Liberty. We had girls filming commercials. We had they were tired because they were filming commercials. They were doing all this other stuff, this extracurricular stuff that had nothing to do with the game. These guys here, what are they doing that is outside the game? I don't see it.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about having like self accountability. I mean, one of the thoughts, and it's not going to be across the ticker going on the screen over there on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel, but like I think I said something on social media. Maybe I didn't, but I definitely thought about it. This makes for a great podcast. I think there's some personnel changes that need to come with the Carolina Panthers, and I'm not talking coaching. Now, if Edgero came back to coach this defense, and this defense takes a step back, at the end of the year, you talked about Robert Saleh being let go. The Jets have the number 5 defense in the NFL and like the 26th ranked offense in the NFL. I don't know if he let Aaron Rodgers run that team or if other things happened in New York that sort of led to the demise of Robert Saleh when they signed Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was saying all the right things, but it was also famous that a lot of players in Green Bay, when Mike McCarthy was let go, he said the same great things about Mike McCarthy, and players in the locker room came out anonymously, albeit, and said, no, they didn't get along. You could tell there was a game this year where Aaron Rodgers throws a touchdown. Saleh tries to celebrate with him, and Rodgers pushed him away. Listen, I say all that to say that, like, if Edgero doesn't make it to the end of the year, or if Edgero decides to leave at the end of the year, I think it's worth reaching out to Robert Saleh. I mean, he's proven that despite having a bad offense, he's a great defensive coordinator. But from a personnel standpoint, I mean, you got to start looking at guys like J.C. Horn.
Yeah.
I mean, this is year 3. I think this is the first year that he's made it 5 games, 6 games into a season without getting hurt. The problem is that he's getting beat. I mean, it's frustrating watching guys you draft high and you expect to produce that come in and don't. I mean, think about Bryce Young. We've gone on at length about talking about the fact that I think they should have benched him last year. I don't think he should have started right away. And he comes in garbage time and looks good, but albeit it's garbage time. Everybody's got it on cruise control and are just ready to go home at that point. So yeah, I'm hoping, and I think that's what a lot of Carolina Panthers fans, words are hard, have been doing over the last few years, is just hoping that this team gets better.
Yeah.
I mean, they're sitting at 1-4, and the leader of the NFC South is at 3-2.
Yes.
They're right in there, but it already feels like another lost season for the Carolina Panthers.
It does. I mean, development has got to be the biggest thing now. As much as we can sit back here and give it to Bryce and hammer Bryce all day long, which I know I came out the gate and I hammered him as well too. I did. But the fact of the matter is there was no development. This is why I have a problem when I hear, oh, well, he's a prodigy, or he's taken to the game so well, or the game is coming to him and he's gonna run this. And when you stop playing games on paper, and you go out on the field, nobody cares about how it looks on paper. It's going out on the field and playing. When he goes out on the field and he plays, this is what you get. You get no touchdowns hardly with the offense. You get the defense getting beat down and worn down. That's what you get out of the team. But this is what you have to understand is development here. You see these squads developing. Look at Atlanta right here. They got a proven veteran in Kirk Cousins. But do you honestly think that Kirk Cousins is not playing his tail off because he's got Michael Penix Jr. breathing down his neck?
I mean, it's funny you mentioned that. I mean, because that's who the Carolina Panthers will be playing this week, are the 3-2 Atlanta Falcons, co-leader of the NFC South. But yeah, I mean, to your point, there's also a lot of weapons on an offense. Like, we haven't gotten to see a lot of Xavier Legette. We're only in week 4. He didn't get targeted in week 2. He didn't have a catch last week. Goes out with an injury. The one guy that was proven on this team, Adam Thielen, is out with an injury on the IR. Deontay Johnson caught the dropsies again this past week after having some pretty strong weeks. As a matter of fact, I don't even think he was the leading receiver this week. It was wide receiver Jalen Coker with 68 yards receiving for the Carolina Panthers. So I mean, you talk about Kirk Cousins and those weapons. Kyle Pitts looks like the tight end that the Falcons drafted him to be, that I doubted he ever would be in Atlanta this season. Everybody keeps going back to the C.J. Stroud. Like, the Carolina Panthers don't have a Nico Collins on that roster.
They don't.
They don't have a Tank Dell.
They don't.
And unfortunately, they don't have a C.J. Stroud on that roster. But yeah, it's hard to watch teams who have sort of been like the perennial co-bottom dwellers alongside Carolina Panthers, like the Falcons, like the Bucs before Tom Brady got there, like the Washington Commanders, who now look like a formidable force in the NFC in Washington. So, yeah, it's hard to watch all these teams get better while the Carolina Panthers continue to stay the same. I mean, I put the Carolina Panthers in that boat with the Raiders, with the Cleveland Browns, with the Houston Texans prior to drafting C.J. Stroud. And it's easy to let all the blame fall on the offense when you had everybody that played well against the Bengals and against the Raiders. You had everybody on the same field against what seemed to be at least a beatable Bears team, and they get blown out. Like, you don't have a good game. Matter of fact, Pinheiro, or is Pinheiro still the kicker at this point? I don't even know. He missed a field goal in this game. Like, you failed in every facet of the game last week against the Bears, and now they get to play host to the leader of the co-leader of the NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons, who were a 6-point road favorite against the 1-4 Carolina Panthers. This is a 4:25 kickoff over on Fox. Shannon, we may or may not be going to this game.
Exactly.
So we'll get to see the beatdown firsthand as podcast hosts of the Cat Cave. We'll talk about that more off the air, and then if we do go to the game, we can give our experience on the pod next week. But Shannon, do the Panthers have any shot to be able to knock off the Falcons this week?
With the way that the Falcons played on Thursday night, with the momentum that they had, with Kirk Cousins throwing 509 yards on Matty Ice Night, setting a record in Atlanta for most passing yards in one game, it's hard. It is very, very hard for that to happen because Atlanta looks really, really good. The only thing that we can probably hope for is that Kirk Cousins has a setback. I don't see it happening, but Kirk Cousins has had times where he's had some setbacks. He's had some times where he's looked human. Do I see that happening here? No.
Yeah, I hate to say it. I don't even think the Panthers cover this 6-point spread. I mean, you got to think, if we're going to be missing 2 of our starting offensive linemen this week, it's going to open the floodgates. I don't care if Andy Dalton. I don't care if Bryce Young. I don't care if Michael Vick is back there. I don't care if Peyton Manning is back there. Whoever's back there is going to get beat up on Sunday against the Falcons. I don't know how long Clowney is going to be out, but that's a pass rusher that you're losing, albeit replacing him with Deshaun Williams is a tall task. Obviously Tommy Trimble's probably not going to play this week, so we're down to tight end. We don't know the health of Xavier Legette, even if he does play. Like, how severe was that shoulder injury, and what kind of production can he put out? It's just, I think it's going to be, unfortunately, another loss for the Carolina Panthers. Shannon, we got to get out of here. Folks, if you want to find Shannon over on social media, you can find him on X and Instagram at podcast_Smitty. You can find me on social media at Tapouts and TDs on X, and then Facebook.com/tapouts and touchdowns. And on Instagram, I am at Ryan Frick Comedy. But you can also follow this show, The Cat Cave, on social media over on Facebook.com/The Cat Cave FFSN, or on X and Instagram at The Cat Cave _FFSN. But until then, you may now exit The Cat Cave, but make sure you listen to more content on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel and more Carolina-themed podcasts on the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, powered by the Fans First Sports Network. For Shannon Smith, I'm Ryan Frick, and we'll see you next week right back here inside the Cat Cave.
Go Panthers.